And welcome back to the Upside Sports Network. My name is Michael. Remember to hit that subscribe button. It really does help us out. Trying to reach 250 by the end of the week. Let's see if we can make it happen. Now, the big news of the day is obviously Deshaun Watson and 3 first-round picks being involved in a trade. Now, the trade itself, Deshaun Watson goes from the Texans to the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns, a day after saying they're not going to trade Baker Mayfield, they're definitely going to trade Baker Mayfield now, acquire the quarterback they've been looking for months, years, decades, it seems like. Baker Mayfield just hadn't proven to be that guy. In return, the Browns are sending back 3 first-round picks, a third-round pick swaps in the fourth and fifth rounds of this year's draft as well. That's one great haul for the Houston Texans. Definitely going to restart their franchise, their rebuild, after basically sending away every single good player with any tenure left on the Texans away. DeAndre Hopkins, now Deshaun Watson, J.J. Watt as well. They pretty much gutted everything from that team. Pretty much anything that wasn't nailed down was gone. And now they're just building from the ground up. Lovie Smith takes over as the coach there, so he should be a good coach to kind of steward a young team going forward. Davis Mills did show some promise at the end of the year, so we'll see what this means for the Texans. But the bigger story is what this means for the AFC. The AFC has just gotten loaded the past couple of years, and especially this offseason, where we saw all the young quarterbacks kind of come into their own. Joe Burrow actually made it to the Super Bowl this year. Justin Herbert's one of the best young quarterbacks in the game. Derek Carr doesn't look like one of those journeyman quarterback anymore. He actually looks like a proficient, decent, solid quarterback, to where he might even be on the edge of a good quarterback. Still not in that elite class. There's only a few of those, but he's definitely better than just an average quarterback. Now, as far as what we could expect going forward from the other teams in the AFC, well, we saw Buffalo made their move and got Von Miller. We saw Denver, of course, getting Russell Wilson. The AFC West in particular has gotten much better. All 4 teams should be playoff worthy. Will they all make it? Probably not. We saw in the NFC West, all 4 teams had really good, strong teams, and only 3 were able to make it. So the Seattle Seahawks essentially just had to gut their roster, and that's why Russell Wilson is no longer there. We'll see what that ends up what ends up happening there. As fallout for this, though, we could possibly see Baker Mayfield on the move to maybe going to Seattle to take the place of Russell Wilson. That would be a good fit for him. The Seahawks seem to be very interested in him. Apparently, they did offer a first-round pick back when Baker Mayfield was in the draft, in addition to another first-round pick to try to get that selection, and were unable to do so. Kind of odd at the time because they had Russell Wilson, but it seems like now might be the time for that marriage to happen. Other teams that are in the mix, the Colts seem like the most obvious candidate, just because that's where Baker Mayfield wants to go. But we've seen in the past, wherever you want to go as a player doesn't necessarily mean you get to go there. Essentially, when you don't have a no trade clause, if you do have a no trade clause, you can kind of steer where you want that conversation to go. And it seems like Deshaun Watson wanted it to go to the Cleveland Browns. Now, as far as the trade itself, how did it happen? There were a number of teams that have checked in on Deshaun Watson over the past couple of years. He, of course, does have his legal troubles, and that's probably one of the bigger reasons why he's available, in addition to his request for a trade. Houston just didn't want to have that situation continue to linger with its organization, and so they were just ready to be done with it. Teams needed to kind of set their cap going forward for this season as well. With taking on such a huge cap hit at the quarterback position by acquiring Deshaun Watson, you need to kind of fit that into your books and see how you're going to make things work with your team. And so that's why we needed to get this done sooner rather than later. That's why you didn't see it happen at the NFL draft. As far as what the timeline was, at first we saw the Carolina Panthers and Miami Dolphins interested in Deshaun Watson. Miami, of course, had that whole turmoil over the year with Tua. Will he stay? Will he be part of the trade going for Deshaun Watson? They started out 1-7, I believe, and Brian Flores just wasn't able to get the ship turned around early enough in the season to save his job. And of course, we've seen how that's ended as well. The lawsuit between Brian Flores and the NFL and the Dolphins and the Giants and the Broncos and now the Texans. So it's just been one huge story, one after another, with this Deshaun Watson saga. Not saying, of course, he caused every single one of these issues, but there's a lot of things, a lot of intangibles that have come along the way to get us to this point. The Carolina Panthers have a great defensive core. They have great defensive line. They improved their cornerback position through trade in the middle of the season last year. Their linebacking core with Shaq Thompson has always been very good. So we'll see what they have going forward. As far as on the offensive side of the ball, they just re-signed wide receiver DJ Moore to a 3-year, $61 million contract, I believe. Great deal for him, and that just seems to be the going rate for high-quality receivers right now. After we saw Devontae Adams get $28 million a year from the Raiders, we saw Christian Kirk get about $20 million a year from the Jaguars. Seems to be right in line for that type of receiver. But they still don't have anybody to throw him the ball. Sam Darnold had his struggles last year, again, had injury issues. They tried bringing back Cam Newton, and that worked for a minute, and then it didn't, and then it worked for another minute, and then it didn't. It was just stop and start and stop and start. And so they were looking for some consistency at quarterback all last year and were unable to find it. They tried trading for Watson during the season last year and were unable to do so. They were in the running all the way up until yesterday, anyway, until Deshaun Watson basically informed their camp that he was not interested in joining their franchise. Now, as far as we accelerate to this offseason anyway, teams that were looking for quarterbacks, Saints, Falcons, pretty much every team out there that didn't have an elite starter was looking to kind of improve that position. Other teams, of course, were the team that got him, the Cleveland Browns. Miami even checked in once or twice, and the Panthers were in it, like I said, up until a couple days ago. However, at the very end, we were expecting to have either the Falcons or the Saints after both the Browns and the Panthers had bowed out, according to multiple media reports, or at least had been told they were out of the running by Deshaun Watson's camp. Seems like the Browns were able to fix that around or turn that around. Falcons would have been a great option as far as being able to accelerate their rebuild. Matt Ryan is not going to get you another 10 years of great quarterback play, and so they're looking to possibly go towards the draft and get another young starting quarterback to fill that position going forward. Matt Ryan is going to be the starter this year. Maybe let one of those younger first-round picks that they're going to have for that quarterback position take over in another year. So we'll see what what leads there. Now, as far as the coach of the Atlanta Falcons, he said when he took over the job that he was fully expecting to have Matt Ryan. In fact, even as he was trying to lobby for the job and interviewing for the job itself, he was hoping to have Matt Ryan just to have a proven quarterback in his first year at the helm of an NFL franchise. So we'll see what that entails for the Atlanta Falcons. Now, as far as the team that I thought was going to get to him, that was the New Orleans Saints. The Saints definitely have a great history of good quarterback play, especially since Drew Brees was there. But since then, they've really had their struggles. They did make Teddy Bridgewater into a successful NFL quarterback. He now is a backup quarterback for Miami. He's a very solid backup for Tua. Should teach him a lot as far as bringing him along, accuracy, those kinds of things, how to deal with adversity, which he had to deal with a lot with last year. So we'll see how Tua grows next year. But for the Saints, because this took so long, they weren't able to go after a guy like Teddy Bridgewater, and I believe that's might be just the guy they would have really liked to have had. Now, Jameis Winston may end up going there, but as far as during this process, they were basically told, along with the Atlanta Falcons, that they were the final two competitors for Deshaun Watson's services. Probably would have been a trade very similar to what we see now. So it'll be interesting to see what the Saints pivot to. Are they going to go back to Jameis and just do one more year there? Do they go to the draft? Remains to be seen. But Sean Payton is no longer the head coach there. That'll be Greg Allen, excuse me. One of the Allens, anyway. I can't remember the first name, but defensive mind. So they're looking for some offensive firepower to come in there, and they would have been very well served to have Deshaun Watson. Now they're going to have to go the rookie route or go the Taysom Hill route or Jameis Winston, all of which are far less appealing and don't really hold much promise for a franchise that needs to turn the page after the era of Drew Brees. They were able to manage their salary cap situation and able to hold on to the majority of their main pieces, but they aren't going to be able to do so for much longer. This core is aging, so it remains to be seen how much longer they'll remain a viable playoff team. Now for the trade itself. 3 first-round picks, a third, and pick swaps going to the Texans. That honestly sounds about right, based on the trade that Russell Wilson the Russell Wilson trade, 2 firsts and a bunch of talent going back to the Seahawks. Seahawks opted for the actual talent on the roster as opposed to getting that third first-round pick and other pieces. Very different ways of doing it, team building, those kinds of things. The Seahawks believe that if they get 1 or 2 pieces and maybe hit on the first-round quarterback or acquire a quarterback via trade, maybe they can stay in playoff contention, and they just might. But the Texans know they're in the rebuild. They're in it for the long term. They don't need to take on moderate salaries, those kinds of things for players who aren't going to be there for the full rebuild. So I can kind of understand the Texans' reasoning here, going for picks instead of players. For the Seahawks, they still believe they have a chance if they can trade for a starter. Now, Baker Mayfield may be the starter they end up trading for with some of those picks that they got in the Russell Wilson deal. So we'll see what ends up happening there. Now, as far as the Cleveland Browns, where do they stack up in the AFC? I believe they're right up there, quite possibly Super Bowl contenders. Do I believe they're favorites right now? No. We haven't seen Deshaun Watson on the field in a year and change. He's got his legal issues to still deal with, suspensions as well. They did trade for Amari Cooper, so they do have a number. Well, depending on what you think of Amari, I think he's still a number one receiver based on his route running. Whether or not you believe his effort is there or not, I don't know. But for me, he seems to play every single day. He plays through injury. He is tough. He makes the catch over the middle. Can't ask too much more of him. Apparently, the Cowboys wanted even more and were unwilling to wait for him to provide that for them, especially when they already had another number one and CeeDee Lamb on the roster. So you can see why Dallas was willing to part with him, especially at a $20 million cap hit. The Browns were willing to take that on, so we'll see what kind of structure his salary or new deal will take on with the Cleveland Browns. I fully expect they try to work with a Cooper Watson tandem, at least until they get another young receiver in there, possibly through the draft. Now, they're not going to have their first round picks for a number of years now, so it remains to be seen what they end up doing in this year's draft. Will they go after another receiver to give Watson more weapons? Will they go after some offensive line, go back to the defense after they parted ways with some linebackers? They also parted ways with Austin Hooper. They did franchise tag David and Njoku, but they seem to have some difficulties anyway as far as making the right decision at the tight end position. They did get a late round pick in Harrison Bryant last year, a pass catching tight end, and he performed admirably when he had two higher paid options on the roster. Does he take over the position going forward? That also remains to be seen. The running back position, though, is very solid for the Cleveland Browns. That is one thing you cannot argue. Kareem Hunt is there. Nick Chubb is there. Both of them, if they were on their own roster, 1,000-yard rushers, easy. On the same team, there's still almost 1,000-yard rushers, or at least Nick Chubb is. Kareem Hunt would be if Nick Chubb did go down. So both are very talented running backs. As far as where they do rank up there, though, currently, I don't see them as Super Bowl contenders, but I do see them as certainly playoff hopefuls. If they get Deshaun Watson for the entire season, I could definitely see them as a potential Super Bowl contender. But until his legal situation gets figured out, that remains to be seen. There's still 22 pending lawsuits against him in civil court. Criminal matters seem to be getting closer to having a head on them as to whether or not he's going to be able to play, those kinds of things. But the civil lawsuits, those seem to be dragging out a little while longer. His depositions just started, I believe, a week ago for one of them. He's got 22 of those lawsuits to go. So we'll see what kind of mindset he's in to even be able to play on the field until he's able to take care of those issues. Now, as far as what remains of the teams who didn't get Deshaun Watson, let's start with the Carolina Panthers. First, they have Sam Darnold on the team as well. Currently, they went after, or they did get PJ Walker last year. They played a little bit with Cam Newton. Did they go back down that road? Maybe for a year, as far as just having somebody to man the helm. I do believe that they're going to take a quarterback in this year's draft. Do I believe any of them will be the long-term answer? Remains to be seen. Quarterbacks at the end of the first round, second round are complete. It's a complete crapshoot at that position anyway. Once you get that late into the first and second round, if you're not a surefire first round pick, more than likely than not, it's going to be a bust. There's very few second and third round quarterbacks that have actually made it. Russell Wilson being one. Dak Prescott was a fourth round pick. Of course, the most famous of all time, Tom Brady, was a sixth round pick. But those are not a dime a dozen. Those are a needle in a haystack. And are you sure you found the right needle in those later rounds to be your franchise quarterback? I don't think you can bank on that if you're the Panthers. Do they go after Jimmy Garoppolo? I don't believe they go after him just because I don't think he's a fit for what they want to do on offense. Other quarterbacks out there, Jameis Winston, maybe they compete with the Saints and try to go after him. He might be a fit there, familiarity with the division, throw the ball down the field. So we'll see what kind of risk they're willing to take at that quarterback position. Let us know in the comments section what you think of the Carolina Panthers and their quarterback position. Do you think they go after one of the proven starters already out there? Kirk Cousins did sign a one-year extension. Do they go after him? I don't think that's enough of improvement over Sam Darnold to even justify a trade. So I don't think that's going to happen either. There's a lot of different options for the Panthers to choose from, and none of them seem appealing to me, at least right now. We'll see what ends up happening. For the Atlanta Falcons, like I already mentioned, Matt Ryan's going to be there this year. I do believe another starter will be there the following year, even though he did sign a 1-year extension. He does have a $7.5 million roster bonus that was due, I believe, yesterday. They went ahead and pushed that deadline to next week. Now that he's going to be on the team, or now that Deshaun Watson is going to the Cleveland Browns, they can go ahead and keep him on the roster, obviously, and hope for the best. There has been a lot of issues with Calvin Ridley, the receiver position, Rasul Douglas. We just saw Russell Gage leave as well. So what are they going to do at that wide receiver position? They just drafted a tight end, number 4 overall last year, Kyle Pitts. While he has been a special talent in the NFL, was it really worth doing your number 4 pick or spending your number 4 pick on a tight end last year when you had much more pressing needs, the future of your franchise? A tight end, sure, he might catch you and might be one of the most dynamic tight ends in NFL history, but you're not forming your team around a tight end. Quarterback, those kinds of positions, left tackle, uh, uh, cornerback, you got defensive end. Those are usually the players that you form your franchise around, not a pass catching tight end. So we'll see what ends up happening there. Other teams that missed out on him, we're looking at the New Orleans Saints. We already mentioned that they have Taysom Hill under contract. They've tried that before. He's much better served as the H back on that team. He just seems to be a turnover machine at the quarterback position. Now, as far as what they could do beyond that, beyond Jameis Winston, beyond any of those Teddy Bridgewater type of quarterback, of course they could go after a draft pick, maybe spend it on Malik in the draft from Liberty, I believe. I forget his last name off the top of my head anyway. But that could be an option for the Saints as well. Let us know in the comment section what you think your team should do now that Deshaun Watson has been traded to the Cleveland Browns.